Hey there, YouTube. What is up? It is Andy here, coming at you again with another Cube update video. People have been enjoying these, and I've been enjoying making them, so the videos about me talking about cube changes will continue until morale improves. This is a big fat set of changes to Sacred Geometry in the wake of Boston Cube Party. I did a Twitch stream where I talked through some of the plans for this with chat, so if you want to see that, the VOD is uploaded on the channel. It's much longer, much less structured, but if you just care about the short, well, I'm not promising short, but if you just care about the to-the-point, focused talk about the changes, you're in the right place. So, in short, my goals after Boston Cube Party are to make green more appealing to drafters and also make green better against the raft of target removal in the cube, which means that my two big focuses for this change are new green cards, specifically green cards that are good against targeted removal, and also jankening up, as I'm calling it, the removal suite in the other colors. Now, I'll talk about it more. I like a high density removal. I don't want to make the removal just less abundant in this environment, but what I do want to do is force people to play jankier removal spells that are less powerful, but still, I think, bring me joy and spark that, just have that je ne sais quoi that you want from a removal spell in this sort of clean, elegant list. So we're going to start here with the focus on the green additions. First and foremost, Heartwood Storyteller. I was introduced to this card in Alex's Cube in middle school. I mean, I'd seen it before, but I'd just forgotten about it. It had been a long time since I'd thought about it. And this is a perfect example of the kind of card that is exactly what I'm looking for this cube for green. 1 green, 2/3, creature treat tree folk. Whenever a player plays a non-creature spell, each of that player's opponents may draw a card. I mean, the obvious thing, it just draws a card if your opponent goes to remove it. I was playing against this in the middle school, which is a very different cube, but had a handful of cantrips and was like, well, that is very good. And it felt interesting to play against, too. It was, symmetrical, so my opponent also couldn't play their non-creature spells. There was a deck-building restriction and a sequencing considerations to it for my opponent. They don't just jam it. But obviously, the green decks, I think, are going to be very creature-heavy. There's already kind of a creature theme, and so I also like that it speaks to a, creatures matter thing in green. And yeah, I think it's just perfect. If I could play more cards like this, I would do it in a heartbeat. It's one line of text, so simple, so clean. I'm obsessed with it. Snakeskin Veil is a card that I have historically not loved. I don't love these kinds of protection gotcha spells. I really don't like the idea that my drafting and putting removal in my deck has turned on my opponent's cards and made them better than they would be otherwise. I don't like being punished for what I feel like is the sort of correct play, or even just play that I like. I think some people might say that about, regular counter spells or removal spells in the first place. They're like, why am I getting punished for putting creature in my deck? Look, I'm not promising that I'm consistent or not a hypocrite. I'm just saying the thing I don't like is when I have a removal spell, my opponent has a stupid Snakeskin Veil. So, yeah, it's historically not a type of card that I like, but it is undoubtedly a great way to give green tools against targeted removal, and in this case, it is one of the cleaner options available, and also ties into the various +1/+1 counter themes that are emerging across the cube. So I gotta at least try it. I'm trying cards of different sort of categories here, and this is the one I'm trying from the, targeted instant speed, sorry, your removal spell does nothing now card. So that's Snakeskin Veil. Definitely worth trying. Sylvan Safekeeper could end up being very polarizing. Green, 1/1, human wizard, sacrifice a land, target creature you control gains Shroud until end of turn. This is undoubtedly good against targeted removal, although I think in a lot of situations, one will have to ask oneself how much they want to turn every single one of their opponent's targeted removal spells into a sinkhole. That could be, a problem in some circumstances. There's not a lands theme here, certainly not intentionally. There's a couple cards that care about lands, like Muldrotha that can play them from the graveyard. I have the Snake Crucible of Worlds as well. But for the most part, this is just a card that allows you to, turn your opponent's removal spells into you sacrificing a land, which I'm actually just curious to see how this plays. I like that it's a 1-drop. It's also very clean. There's something that is definitely adding a lot of complexity with having to be aware of abilities your opponent can activate at all times. It could totally change your sequencing. This kind of has like a Mother of Runes style effect in that way. So I have to be on the lookout for that. And I also think Heartwood Storyteller is another good example of a card that a trigger that everyone has to keep track of does add complexity. So I want to keep an eye on that kind of stuff, but I definitely have to try it. Again, it's sort of another category of this type of card that's good against targeted removal, and so in it comes. Shaper Sanctuary is the one I'm most excited about and also most trepidatious about. This is just an enchantment, 1 green mana, When a creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability opponent controls, you may draw a card. I think most players are not going to main deck this. I'm not sure sitting here right now if I think you should main deck this. There's a lot of targeted spells and abilities in every color combination, so I think part of me wonders if this just should be a main deck inclusion if you're a creature-heavy deck. But I think realistically people are going to put it in the sideboard and then bring it in against, Grixis control, Esper control, the colors that have a lot of removal spells they can point at their creatures. And in those matchups, especially if you're like, the either Grixis or... Well, Esper will have access to Disenchant. If you're specifically in the Grixis color combinations, you'll have no way to deal with a Resolve, Shaper, Sanctuary aside from a few random bounce spells. But mostly you're just going to have to deal with it, which means that if your opponent does have it on turn 1, you might just lose on the spot, which would not be fun, I don't think, particularly. And then, conversely, your opponent's just going to draw this on turn 9 and be like, well, okay, this does nothing, right? Like, my opponent's already moved all my creatures. I need a threat off the top, and instead I drew Shaper, Sanctuary, and that's dumb. But on the flip side, it is also exactly what I asked for. I asked for clean cards that are good against target removal, and Shaper Sanctuary fits the bill perfectly. And to some degree, I think I have to lean into the fact that if I care about the elegance and simplicity of the individual cards, I'm going to have to lean into much more polarized, sort of sideboard-esque cards, right? Because a lot of the nuance that comes from cards that are like a little good against removal is that they have a lot of other abilities. They're more complex. They can do something from the graveyard. They make a bunch of tokens when you TB. They have other triggers that they care about. They just have more going on. And because I'm trying to play cards that do one thing, that are very simple, it's hard for a card that does one thing, and it is very simple to just be good against removal if it's a creature, because what else does it do? So Shaper Sanctuary it fits the bill perfectly, and whether or not I like the play patterns is to be determined. I mean, honestly, whether people put it in their decks is to be determined. I would not be surprised if the first few drafts, the green drafters just leave this in their sideboard and never even bring it in, even when their opponent is on Grixis mono removal spells. People just often don't think about sideboarding. And honestly, I think having some sideboardy cards is not a thing I'm opposed to. I think maybe giving players a reason to sideboard, even when they are less enfranchised or newer to the game, or just forget about their sideboard, regardless of how enfranchised they are, it could be kind of cool. I think there's something to that. I think Parker called it sideboarding in, silver bullets versus sideboarding to cut some of the cards that are now, C minuses for some of the cards that became C pluses, right? These sort of marginal improvements to your deck based on sort of more nuanced play patterns. This one's obvious, right? Like if you have this in your pool and you don't sideboard it in against Grixis mono removal, I don't know what else to do for you, right? Like you can lead a horse to water. So we'll see about that. Silver for Partisan and Barcard Troll. These are actually two very similar cards, I think, believe it or not. They both are small threats, a 2/2 and a 3/3. It becomes a 2/2 if you have to use its ability, that provide a disincentive to your opponent pointing a removal spell at them, so they fit the brief. But the weird thing is that they're not actually that threatening on their own, right? Like, okay, who's going to remove your 2/2 with Trample for 3 mana? It's a 3 mana 2/2. You can probably just take a couple hits from it if you need to, or it will trade with so many things in combat. It will trade with 1-drops. It will trade with almost every 2-drop. It's going to trade down a lot. So this one's kind of interesting because why am I going to point a removal spell at it if I'm your opponent? You have to make me want to point a removal spell at it. And on top of that, I think people specifically will read this one, and it says specifically when a wolf or werewolf you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery spell, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. Because it cares about both you and your opponent's spells, it doesn't have the word opponent on it. And I think some people will read this and just assume it is a payoff for like a heroic-esque strategy and miss that it is a card that triggers when your opponent targets it as well, which might just render it not even doing the job that I expected to do. It's a really cool card. I've always loved this card. And to be fair, I am adding a wolf theme, so that ability, which does count other wolves and werewolves you control, which is another thing about that might be not the cleanest. We'll see. You can make that matter for other creatures, in which case this does become a problem, because if you can't target your Nightpack Ambusher with a removal spell, now all of a sudden Silver for Partisan is a huge problem. But yeah, and then Barcard Troll, it's a 3/3 for 2 mana, which is fine. Good rate. And then has this ability to remove a counter from it to give it hexproof till end of turn. But then you're left with a 2/2. So it's like, am I really going to hold up a mana to threaten the activation of turning my 3/3 into a 2/2 to fizzle your lightning bolt? Like, I guess, but it also seems like not worth it to play a mana down for any number of turns to protect what will be my 2/2 at the end of the day. Now, the upside on this, obviously, is that if you can put counters on this in some other way, which there are a number of other ways to do in the cube, then you can protect it multiple times, which makes it quite good, especially if you can put a bunch of counters on it, then it becomes a threat that is worth protecting. So that is sort of the tension there. We'll see how much that comes up. I was really tempted just to put Colonian Tusker in here, which is just a green 3/3, which is, objectively worse. It's a strictly worse card, but this has a bunch of text that I think will very rarely matter. And so the question is just, how much does that text actually matter? Is it worth people having to read this card for how many times it's going to be activated? And I don't know the answer to that question right now. I said I wasn't going to edit these. My stupid dog is clawing at the door. Sadie, come in. You're ruining Daddy's video. Yeah. Now Dad doesn't edit. So anyway, Elvish Visionary is coming in. This is a clean iconic card. Is it good against removal? Technically, because it draws a card on ETB. Again, who's going to bother to try and remove Elvish Visionary? Nobody. It's not worth removing. It's also barely a threat, but, just a creature that draws a card, good against removal. Treetop Village is actually not good against targeted removal at all, but it is good against board wipes, which are a adjacent concern, and it's also just my favorite creature land of all time. It's the first creature land in the cube, and also the first utility land of any kind. The cube only has fixing lands in it right now, save for Treetop Village, which is definitely just a category of cards I have not really thought about in terms of defining what types of utility lands feel like they meet my sort of simplicity, elegance, cleanliness goals. But Treetop Village is a better place to start than any because I love that card. So this is the sort of suite of green cards that I'm introducing to try and give green an edge against targeted removal and also make it a little more appealing for people to play. Now, on that second point, I'm not sure any of these cards actually do that because none of these are individually like power outliers in green. I mean, maybe Treetop Village, honestly, is the most powerful card here. But these are good against targeted removal. Now, the cards that will actually draw people in, I think, maybe, are Wolves. I am taking out Call of the Herd, which currently is the only green card that makes tokens, and it makes 3/3 elephants. I'm instead swapping it for these 3 green cards that make 2/2 wolves. We've already talked about Silverfur Partisan. I'm also adding Wolfbriar Elemental, which is the true draw here. I love Wolfbriar Elemental. I always have. I think his card is perfect. It's good against targeted removal. It's great ramp payoff. It's a perfect card. And I'm also bringing in Master of the Wild Hunt, which is almost certainly going to be the most wordy card in the cube now. And this card is actually also not that powerful, but I do think it is a very resonant package. This idea that it's a human shaman that leads a pack of wolves and their pack keeps growing and they can sick their pack of wolves on something else. It is a very tidy, resonant design package that I think carries a lot of that complexity and makes it okay that it's got a lot of words on it. It's also aspirational. I think especially newer players will see this card and be like, this is awesome. I'm going to make a huge army of wolves. That rules. Oh, you know what? I forgot to even mention, the most important addition here, I just didn't even put it in the list of cards, is Nightpack Ambusher. Nightpack Ambusher is the other one I'm bringing in. So in terms of the power level outliers, it's Nightpack Ambusher and Wolfbriar Elemental that are coming in as big draws for green. Nightpack Ambusher, not necessarily good against targeted removal, but just a powerful card in general and a payoff for various wolf strategies. And Wolfbriar Elemental, very good against removal and also, I think, a new power outlier in green. It does a lot at 6, 7, 8 mana that just makes it very hard for any deck, save for board wipes, to ever come back from. So these are all coming in, including Master. We'll see how I end up feeling about these cards overall. And again, Partisan fits in kind of a weird space here, right? Like, Partisan kind of cool with specifically Nightpack Ambusher. Though, interestingly, like, the Wolfbriar Elemental has all the value on ETB, and it's also an elemental, so it's not getting protected from Partisan. The individual wolf tokens are probably not eating removal spells, though maybe bounce spells. Like if I had, Repeal or some other bounce spells we'll talk about in a second, I would be plenty excited to bounce a wolf token here or there, which Partisan would draw me cards or draw my opponent cards from. So, I'm sorry, make them additional wolves from. So, we'll see. I'm considering other wolf cards as well. Wolf Willow Haven is always right on the cusp. It's pretty boring, but it does the thing. Kessid Cagebreakers is, I think, maybe signals a little too much of some sort of like self-mill theme, which I don't really support, but is also just a great Baneslayer. 5 mana attack, make 2, 3, 5 wolves is incredible. But that also does not solve my sort of good against target removal problem, which is why I did not bring it in this iteration, because this just eats any number of removal spells and then does nothing for 5 mana. Howling Moon is actually a card completely new to me. It's an enchantment, 2 and a green, The beginning of combat on your turn, target wolf or werewolf you control gets +2/+2 till end of turn. And whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Mostly interested in it for that second ability, which I think is obvious. I think punishing your opponent double spelling is cool. It's another way to punish the target removal decks because you don't want to spend a whole turn cycle just lightning bolting your opponent's creature. You want to do multiple things. You want to be drawing cards and removing stuff. Those decks tend to cast a lot of spells. One thing I don't love about this, and it's also true of Silver for Partisan, is the reference to werewolves, which there are none in the cube. So, I mean, Silver for Partisan kind of looks like one, but it's just a wolf that happens to be guy-shaped. So that I don't love, and we'll see where I end up landing on that. I'm also, to be honest, considering Tolsimir Friend to Wolves, which I think to many people would feel like it violates so many rules of this cube. It's a unique token, which is the biggest thing holding me back. It also has a lot of text on it. But I also think that it's so beautiful. I love this card. I think it's like, 5 mana for 2 3/3s, and one of the 3/3s fights, and you gain a little life, and then you have this thing that cares about wolf-type cards for the remainder of the game in play. I think it's just a very cool card I've always been a fan of. And green gold cards specifically that are higher mana value are where I'm happy to spend a little bit of my complexity budget. So those are all sitting right on the cusp, depending on how this sort of round of edits goes. And I should say that this is the sort of size of edit. What are we talking about here? We're talking about 22 cards changed, which this is the sort of size of edit where, honestly, for me, it starts to get hard to visualize what the cube looks like, because when you're looking at the Cube Cobra page, you have your list of edits, but the cube list below it still has all the old cards in it. And so I can't glance at it and see how many 4-drops I have in green or whatever. I have to do some mental processing. So I just felt like I couldn't change much more without actually committing those changes and seeing how it felt. So I think more changes are probably right around the corner, but smaller, hopefully. Let's get on to the jankening of removal. I'm actually going to start with the things that I cut. I'm cutting Path to Exile, Lightning Strike, Shock, Infernal Grasp, and Seal of Removal, which is a little bit of a different story. But Path, Strike, Shock, and Grasp are all just not the most iconic versions of their effect, not the most interesting versions of their effect, not the most fun versions of their effect. They're all kind of like second order, and they're just all very powerful. They're all great, and I'm just planning to cut down on some of those to instead swap them out for jankier options. This is, again, my goal of keeping the removal density high, because I like high removal density environments. I don't like playing Magic where the boards get out of control and people can just keep whatever they cast. But if I'm forcing people to play janky removal, my goals are, number one, make the more expensive creatures better, because they're harder to remove. There's no longer Path to Exile and Infernal Grasp. You instead have Last Gasp, which can't kill any of the 5-drops in this queue, I believe, save for Kiki Jiki. So you've just got these cards that now you have to, be more strategic with, or we're forcing you to play just jankier removal in your deck. So Last Gasp, very straightforward. I don't have any particular affection for this card. It's not like I love Last Gasp, but it's super clean, and it swaps out a unconditional removal spell for one that is conditional on creature size, which I think is a trend I'm generally looking for. Rolling Thunder is coming in. A sort of side quest of this cube is getting at least one of all of Magic's iconic card archetypes. And to me, a Fireball is an iconic Magic card, and Rolling Thunder is the cleanest Fireball. Not close, no contest. So it's coming in. It's also bad. It's really, really bad on rate. I mean, you're spending 5 mana to get an Arc Lightning when Arc Lightning, or Flames of the Firebrand, the cleaner version of Arc Lightning, is already in the cube. So the rate is quite poor, but at the same time, it also has the sort of potential to steal games that other burn spells don't introduce, right? Like some decks late game will be just hoping to draw Rolling Thunder when they have 7 or 8 mana so they can Plague Wind their opponent or just Fireball them to death. It gives you outs in situations other burn spells don't give you outs in, which honestly is pros and cons. I don't love a game that's stolen by a Fireball. Generally speaking, it's not my favorite way for a Magic game to end. But I think it's worth it for the equity of having a Fireball in this cube, and it also is definitely a janky removal spell compared to the other stuff. Jilt. Oh, Jilt, my heart. I love you. I love this card. This card has never seen a reprint. 1 in a blue for an instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Kicker 1 in a red. If you pay the kicker cost, Jilt deals 2 damage to another target creature. This thing will just blow up any kind of combat scenario. Makes double blocks absolutely impossible. And actually, I don't think is very low power. This card is still a kind of 2-for-1. I mean, the bounce is not a whole card, obviously, because they get to put it back in their hand. But you can often turn this into at least a 1.5 or 2-for-1 cards worth of value, and it's so good against the sort of small ball aggro decks. Buys you so much time, kills a threat, bounces another threat. I think this card will probably make some believers out of some people, but it's also clearly not Lightning Bolt, Swords Plowshares, that kind of tier of card. This one's going to be especially gross to double up with Double Vision or, cast a couple times with Kess, so keep an eye out for Jilt. Recoil is a favorite of mine too. I absolutely adore this card. For those that don't know, I'm sure I listened to this on an episode of Drive to Work at some point, but Recoil basically is the perfect gold card that speaks to, frankly, a sort of earlier bygone era of the color pie where blue and black both don't really have ways to deal with a resolved artifact or enchantment. I mean, now black gets enchantment removal, but historically, they never had ways to deal with a resolved enchantment or artifact. Maybe blue has some bounce that can put it back in their hand, but, these colors, it's a hole that both these colors have. And Recoil is a perfect example of how you can combine strengths of two colors into a gold card that then allows them to patch a hole that those colors both have in their identity. I'm saying this very clunkily, but Recoil can destroy any permanent as long as your opponent is hellbent, and it does that by combining the most iconic blue type of interaction, which is bounce. Well, I guess Counterspell is probably the most iconic. A prototypical iconic blue type of interaction, which is bounce, with a prototypical iconic black type of interaction, which is discard. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's elegant. I do have a couple bounce lands in this cube, and recoiling your Selesnya Sanctuary is devastating, so we'll see if that ends up being a problem. I would probably just cut the bounce lands, because at this point I think I also have, one or two other ways to potentially interact. It Vindicate's in here, I know, so that's a problem against bounce lands. But, yeah, we'll see if it ends up being a problem. It's definitely a favorite card. The art has never been my favorite, frankly, but it's got that old school Magic vibe that you can't really fake. So that's that. There's also a bunch of miscellaneous editions that have been piling up in my maybe board that I've been really wanting to squeeze in there. I kind of locked the list before Boston Cube Party, placed the order for the last couple cards I needed, and then said, I will make these changes after Boston Cube Party. And so here they are. Blood Scrivener, another great Alex suggestion. Never seen this card before until Alex suggested it. 1 in a black, creature zombie wizard, 2/1. If you would draw a card while you have no cards in hand, instead draw 2 cards and lose 1 life. Wow. What an excellent payoff for low-curving black decks or black decks that have self-discard. They have madness themes. They're getting hellbent otherwise, and now you can just draw 2 cards. Really hoping someone combines this with Avaricious Dragon for just the Wombo combo. That would be so cool. So we'll see. It's also just zombie type line is relevant here. It's very cool. Sarah Redeemer is a very clean, perfect card for this cube. It's an angel. It's an iconic creature type. It's got a very simple line of text. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, put 2+1/+1 counters on it. It has the potential to combine with other cards to be worth more than the sum of their parts. It's a simple ability, but the ability inspires you, right? It's I want to combine this with Lingering Souls. I want to combine this with Hordling Outburst or whatever. It has a lot of sort of ways that it sort of encourages you, and then it also just puts +1/+1 counters on your creatures, which is a theme that is emergent in both white and green, and to a lesser extent a little bit red. So yeah, I think the only question here is just, do I want 2 5-drop angels in white? And I don't know the answer to that question as I sit here today, because if I decide I don't want 2 in white, this one's going to have to go, because I'm never cutting Archangel of Thune ever. So Jackpop is coming in. It's an iconic red aggro creature. It's also one of the best things for aggressive red decks to do on turn 1. Alex pointed out again. Alex has been invested in this cube. Thank you to Alex. Shout out for all your great suggestions. Alex pointed out that red aggro just doesn't really have any great 1-mana plays. Very few that can do. I think only one that can do 2 damage on turn 2, after your opponent untaps. So Jackpop's coming in. It does the job. Doom Necromancer is also coming in. I've wanted to add a Hell's Caretaker style card, a creature that has an ability to bring a creature back from the graveyard. And Hell's Caretaker is almost the perfect version, except it says activate this ability only during your upkeep, which is a really clunky line of text. I would probably accept activate this ability only as a sorcery. Otherwise, this card would be an absolute nightmare in combat. You would never be able to do anything against this card. But activate during your upkeep is really gross. So I can't bring myself to put that one in there. I was considering both Doom Necromancer, Apprentice Necromancer, and Whisper Blood Liturgist, which is kind of the spicy include. This is actually, I think, the fixed Hell's Caretaker, in that you have to sacrifice 2 creatures instead of 1, but you can do this whenever you want, and it is a 4-mana 2/2 instead of a 4-mana 1/1. So that one's kind of cool. I actually don't know if I have enough recursion or token generation in black to make that appealing. I mean, I guess it goes kind of dummy with whatchamacallit, Headless Rider, because you can sacrifice your non-zombies, your non-token zombies first to get zombie tokens to get back your zombie creatures, and then sacrifice zombie tokens. You can actually like start to cycle things pretty efficiently with that combination. But yeah, for now it's just Doom Necromancer. It's pretty clean. I am really, really into the idea of specifically making Mayhem Devil good here, not by punishing fetch lands or treasure tokens or any of the sort of more ubiquitous things, but by having cards like Doom Necromancer in your deck that sacrifice themselves, or playing Edicts, stuff that's like the old school sacrifice stuff, is what I'm hoping to make Mayhem Devil good with. So that's coming in for that. Frontline Rush is a really cool card from the Tarkir Dragonstorm. Red-white, instant. Choose 1, make 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, or target creature gets +X to end of turn, where X is the number of other creatures you control. Of creatures you control, not other. Of creatures, so counting the creature itself. There is a theme in red-white of both going wide and making tokens, and also having power and toughness greater than your base power and toughness with a card specifically like Baird. So this just checks all the boxes, and I think is fantastic. I also like the creature token creating spells, specifically because I'm imagining a sort of double vision control deck that plays a bunch of creature token generating spells as its only win conditions. Like, just imagine you end step, Frontline Rush, make 4 goblins, and then you untap and cast Heroic Reinforcements and make 4 more creatures and give everything +2/+0 until end of turn, and you attack for a gazillion. Yeah. I'm going to miss Sky Knight Legionnaire. Is that the right card? Did I type the wrong card name here? No, I did type the wrong card name. I'm cutting the Sky Knight Vanguard, not Sky Knight Legionnaire. I gotta make that edit, which is the 2-mana guy that attacks to make tokens. Where is he? Yeah, there you go, Sky Knight Vanguard. This card is beautiful, and I love it, and I was so excited to have a place to play it, and it might still come back. But there's so many Boros cards I love. Frankly, Boros has been the easiest guild for me to get right here, I think. I'm bringing in Edric Spy, Master of Trest. I think people know this card. It's a sort of long ago staple of Vintage Cube, and I think probably still maybe I guess a long ago staple of probably Commander. People probably don't play this in Commander anymore either, because it doesn't have partner or choose a background or whatever. But 1 green white 2/2. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. Little clunky that it says it's controller, but overall a pretty clean card. And what I really love about this is that it is just its ability to single-handedly completely change the direction of a draft and be like, all right, I got some like mana dorks, and I pick up an Edric, and now I'm just going to be playing this like, go wide deck to try and attack with a bunch of small creatures, is very appealing to me. Or, I'm playing blue, and I have a couple token generators. I've got my Drakehaven. It's really cool with Drakehaven, really cool with Talrand. I'm going to like turn this into a way to turn my tokens into more card advantage to make that loop happen. But the real important thing here is that Arlo's going to kill me. I'm going to be killed by a Gaytrans Muldrifter, because I got to be honest, Mystic Saint just does not feel right to me. I think something about it being a gold card and it being like a kind of very... I think it has like Ravenous Chupacabra effect. Like, clean, but completely lacking Riz to me. And I can't... I have no better explanation, right? Like, I'm so much more into Skin Render here than Ravenous Chupacabra, even though Ravenous Chupacabra is definitely the cleaner version of that effect. Mystic Snake is clean. It's very, very clean, but for some reason, it just feels wrong to me. Maybe that's just today. Maybe in the future, it'll feel less wrong to me. But as I sit here today, I really want my gold cards to be a place where people can see some aspirational effects and maybe get inspired. So that's that. Elite Vanguard is also coming in as redundancy for Savannah lines. More white aggro cards, more vanilla creatures. Vanilla creatures are great. Love them in this cube. Cuts, I've already talked about cutting some of the good removal spells. I've also talked about some of the sort of 1-for-1 cuts, Frontline Rush for Sky Knight Vanguard, etc. The other cuts fit into a couple categories. The first is getting rid of the Arkbound sort of artifact creature theme, or rather, trimming it from colored cards. These Arkbound creatures in colors just didn't feel right to me. Something about colored artifacts creatures does not feel right for this environment. So how much does cutting these 5 utterly middling cards affect the viability of Arkbound Ravager and Scrap Trawler and Triskelion? I don't know. It does affect it, certainly, but I'm still hoping that there is a sort of emergent, tidy, condensed, concise package that is playable with Arkbound Ravager and Scrap Trawler, but maybe I'm wrong. Time will tell. I was also just pruning some of the least powerful cards from green, just in order to attempt to make green better. So Somber Walled Stag, Abundant Growth, Elvish Piper, Forgotten Agent, Satyr Wayfinder, all sort of below replacement level stuff in terms of power level for green. And I've been on record saying that power level is not at all my first focus of this cube, and that is true. I'm adding Rolling Thunder and Recoil for gosh sake. But in the case of just making green appealing, I have to pay some attention to it. Elvish Pepper is the one I'm going to miss the most. This card is incredibly clean, but it's also a 4-mana 1/1 that requires you to then have a good card in hand to still do anything when you untap with it. I may make a return at someday once I get green sort of cleaned up, but for now, I got to try some stuff, and I need room. I also am cutting some of the powerful cards from green, but the ones that are less resonant or clean designs. Caller had to go to make room for tokens, as I mentioned. Jewel Thief, I'm still keeping treasure tokens for War and Soul Trader and Collector's Vault, but getting rid of them on cards like Jewel Thief. Seasons Past is a card that I adore, but I have to accept this is probably not the cube for it. I think games are already quite grindy, and giving decks a bigger reason to be grindier is not something I should be thinking to do. And Aftermath Analyst, I know this card on paper is so elegant and beautiful, but it doesn't do it for me. Something about the fact that it's a detective, maybe, the art, I don't know. It's also got a fair bit of text on it. These cards just weren't doing it. And the last cut that fits into none of those categories is Thief of Sanity, which was just too wordy. It was good. People reported they had fun playing with it, and it was powerful, but yeah, I mean, the fact that you have to keep track of how many cards it is, whether you can cast them this turn or any turn in the future part of the game, whether it carries if you still have the Thief of Sanity in play, what happens to the cards you don't cast, like, it's all kind of complicated. So I did also see specifically, man, it was Allison lost in the finals against Julian. She hit Julian with her Thief of Sanity, and Julian was playing a zombie deck, and her options were, the 3 cards she saw off the top were Diregraph Colossus, Gravecrawler, and I think Moan of the Unhallowed. Something else that mattered in the graveyard. And she didn't know it at the time, but Julian had War and Soul Trader in his hand. So, in that case, that hit of Thief of Sanity just literally helped Julian. So that's also possible with this card, which is, it's an edge case. It's a thing you have to be aware of. So that's the updates here. As I mentioned, this cube is still very new, very green, and I expect to make a lot more changes in the future. A lot of this green stuff is very tentative. I just want to see how it feels. There's a couple other sort of packages I'm thinking and floating on. I mentioned in the video where I was talking through all the different green token makers that I think things that care about elf typal is a direction I might end up going, and there's a couple elegant cards that make green elf tokens. Let me see. I got another window open here. What are the cards that make the green elf tokens that I like? They are... the ones that make Elf Warriors specifically, like Thorn Lieutenant, Dwindon's Elite, Imperious Perfect, Elvish Warmaster, maybe even Ren's Packmaster, probably not that last one. But those first 4 cards, all pretty good, pretty elegant, that would fit that goal. So I might bring in some Elf Warrior tokens. I might go a 2-token route in green the same way I'm doing in white. The 2 colors that make the most tokens get to make different kinds of tokens instead of just one kind. That's entirely reasonable, so you might end up there. But yeah, I feel pretty good about these changes, I think. I'm curious to play some green. I want to see how it does. I'm really excited to play with Blood Scrivener, really excited to play with Frontline Rush. I want to give Edric a chance. Yeah, that's the state of the cube. So, if you like these videos, subscribe to the channel. You can find our podcast every Monday on luckypaper.co/podcast or wherever podcasts can be found under the name Lucky Paper Radio. And, I'll keep these videos coming. I'm having a good time making them.